Hello, everyone. I'm Margarita Pinton Perez, and I'm the Community Partnership Leader with the Learning Network at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children. On behalf of the Learning Network, welcome to the Resource Spotlight titled The Risk Identification and Safety Assessment RISA Tool, a trauma-informed and intersectional approach to risk management. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are learning, speaking, and hosting this virtual event on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenantem and Chunnington nations. These lands are connected with the London Township and Sombre Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. Today, this land continues to be home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We give our deep respect to the first inhabitants of this land and recognize that an acknowledgement of Indigenous land and sovereignty comes with a responsibility to understand the history and ongoing impacts of settler colonialism. These impacts continue to be felt in disproportionate and everyday ways against Indigenous communities. We also reflect on those who came to this land involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands because of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. As the Learning Network is focused on mobilizing knowledge to end the spectrum of gender-based violence, we also recognize that today these nations face disproportionate forms of gender-based violence and a crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and 2S LGBTQIA+ peoples. We recognize the responsibility for our work to be informed of the colonial imprint and harms that shape the experiences of GBV against Indigenous communities. And we commit to furthering our work in ways that best uphold solidarity with Indigenous survivors and those supporting them. We are pleased to welcome today our presenters from the Barbra Schlifer Commemorative Clinic, who will be sharing the Risk Identification and Safety Assessment RISA Tool, a resource designed to help service providers working with clients who have experienced gender-based violence. I'm delighted to introduce Deepa Mattu, the Executive Director of the Barbra Schlifer Commemorative Clinic. Deepa is a dedicated lawyer and intersectional feminist recognized for her commitment to advancing equity, anti-oppression, and anti-racism. Over her extensive career, she has trained thousands of service providers to support forced marriage survivors, racialized non-status women, and clients navigating immigration law. Joining Deepa is Emma Copeland, the training lead and technology coordinator for the Schlifer Clinic's RISA project. Emma has been involved in the development and implementation of RISA, first as a research and project assistant and now in their new role. You can find a link to their full bios in the chat. Welcome, Deepa and Emma. I'll now hand it over to you to begin your presentation, and I look forward to rejoining you when we start the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Margarita, and thank you everyone for making this happen and bringing this spotlight to people who are joining us today. Welcome everyone who's joined us. Risk Identification and Safety Assessment, RISA, as we call it, tool, is a trauma-informed tool which uses an intersectional approach to risk assessment. I also want to thank my co-presenter, Emma, for joining me, as well as Margarita for inviting us to present today. We are excited to share the details of RISA tool with all of you. Before we go into the details of the tool, I would like to share a little bit about the clinic, where the tool is designed and where me and Emma both are employed. So Barbra Schlifer Commemorative Clinic, as the name gives away, is named after Barbra Schlifer, who was a lawyer. And on the night of her call to the bar, unfortunately, she was killed. And that femicide gave rise to this initiative, which is called Barbra Schlifer Clinic. Since 1985, it's been 40 years of existence for us. We are a specialized clinic in downtown Toronto area. We offer free trauma-informed services in legal counseling and interpretation. So those are our three pillars. Within those three pillars, we provide various services. In the area of counseling, we provide counseling and transitional housing services. In legal, we provide both family, immigration in one side of our team. And on the other side, we provide supports for criminalized survivors, for sexual assault and harassment. We provide services as well. We are the only independent legal advice voucher system service here in Ontario, and one of the first ones in the ILA as well. We provide multilingual interpretation in 200 plus languages, and we also run a social purpose enterprise with immigrant and refugee survivors, and which is related to the interpretation services as well. We have a centralized intake space where we do client need assessment, which includes risk assessment and safety planning. We provide case management as well as advocacy and law reform work that is part of the clinic's mandate. Our clinic intervenes at various different levels of court system on a regular basis for public interest. We served this past year close to 16,000 women and gender diverse people. And since opening our doors, we have served over 150,000 people over these 40 years. So with that, I'll pass it on to Emma to talk about the risk assessment tools.
Hello, everyone. So before we get into the RISA tool itself, I wanted to give you a brief overview of why using a risk assessment tool is so important. So risk assessment tools are a very important part of conducting both a thorough and accurate evaluation of the risk of future violence that survivors may be facing. Because they're meant to be systematic and evidence-based, tools can help us identify signs or factors that we may otherwise miss if we're not quite sure what to look for. Tools also provide a shared understanding and language about risk for service providers. They help ensure that service providers know what kinds of questions to ask, what factors to look out for, and that they're not missing any potential risks. Also, according to our research, using validated tools can actually provide stronger evidence in the legal system, which can ultimately benefit survivors who are seeking legal justice. We know that there can be consequences if we miss signs, but risk assessment tools can help to mitigate that. And an effective risk assessment tool can help save lives. I'll now hand it back over to Deepa so she can talk a little bit more about the research that went into the RISA tool.
Thank you, Emma. So the risk assessment tool, RISA, came to the clinic some 6 years back. We started working on it. But before that, for almost over a decade, the clinic has long been developing risk assessments for various specific populations that we were working with. So say, for example, in the area of force managers or in the area of so-called honor-based violence, we realized that a lot of risk assessment tools that were available out there in the community were not suitable for the communities that we were working with. So we have been developing and working with risk assessments for many, many years. RISA, when we started working on RISA, right before RISA, we had worked on another version of a risk assessment tool, which was meant specifically for risk identification in the family court system called RIA, and that is also available on our website. And therefore, from there, we got the impetus to work on RISA, which was more broader and intersectional too. It was informed by large-scale research initiative. The clinic's research included literature review, consultation with over 597 service providers. We also did consultation with 38 service survivors in a structured protocol that we have. Around that, for specific projects, we create what we call community engagement advisory groups, and our survivors inform and educate and lead us in those consultations. We also did piloting of the risk identification and safety assessment tool with over 220 service providers across Canada. So RISA was rated overall 4.5 over 5 rating in all these overall consultations that we did. And if I move along to the next slide, basically, here are a few things, and this artistic rendition kind of gives you understanding of what are the kind of feedback that we got around why risk assessment tools were not working, or were working, both. So if you look at the top image, looking at our research finding, what we found is that many of the major tools are focused primarily on the perpetrator behavior, and they try to predict the repeat offense. So, and there is risk of future harm that is focused on. Most tools that are developed do not have any major input from survivors. We also saw that most tools focus primarily on the risk factors associated with the physical violence and threats posed by the abuser and other types of abuse, for example, the coercive control and power and control or psychological abuse are not included in most tools. We also notice that most tools do not look at the systemic risk factors and look at the experiences of equity deserving groups. So, which could also mean that a lot of these tools do not have intersectional approach in their design and implementation. And again, one thing which is very common reality for most tools is that they're not tested with people who do not speak English as their first language or French as their first language, and they are tested only with people with heterosexual experiences and heterosexual couples or heteronormative behavior, and not necessarily with the gender diverse populations. Now, looking at the feedback from the survivors in the bottom image, what you will notice is that survivors from our consultation expressed that many of these tools did not include the experience of their trauma. 95% of the survivors who were interviewed were indicating that no one actually used any tool when they were getting assisted, and 45% indicated that they did not have any detailed safety plan. They felt overwhelmed by the nature and the sequence of questions, and the questions were too technical most of the time, and they felt it was too fast-paced. This is really, from our perspective, a call to the action for providers of services within the GBV context, and to think about the use of tools for deepening our understanding of how trauma operates and how we can figure out delivering our services in a way that mitigate against causing further harm. And also think about when should a tool be used and how should a tool be used. We also heard a lot of survivors telling us about that they need safety plan strategies which are accessible. They also kind of educated us about the need and importance of emotional safety as part of the safety plan. And another thing that we have noted, and that was in this project, but also overall that we have noted is that many times safety plans and resources need to be offered in various formats and languages. So overall, RISA's extensive research and piloting has educated us, but it has also challenged us to ensure that survivors and service providers' voices were always centered throughout various stages of development. And we have summarized a lot of this in our research bulletins, and there's a lot of materials available on our website, on the main Schlifer website, as well as on the RISA website. And I'm also hopeful that some of these resources were shared with you in advance. And now I hand over to Emma to take you over the RISA website itself.
Thank you, Deepa. So I'm just going to share my screen, so just bear with me for one moment. Are people able to see my screen? Okay, amazing. So this is the RISA Tool website. It's called www.riseaboverisk.ca. This is the main page that you'll see when you go onto the website. So I'm going to briefly walk you through a couple components of the tool before we get into the demo itself. So I'm going to start by clicking on Explore Tool. And you'll see it takes you down here to the three main components of the tool. We have the framework, the learning modules, and the RISA questionnaire. So beginning with the RISA framework, The framework is really meant to showcase our approach to understanding risk and is inspired by Black feminist and intersectional feminist scholars. It's an intersectional, survivor-centered framework, and it takes into account both individual and system-level factors. It was really important to us to create a tool that is more intersectional and holistic than what currently exists. And I'll just say that this really is an ongoing process. We hope that users of the tool can use this framework to expand or deepen their own understanding of risk. And I'll briefly walk you through the 3 different levels. Our learning modules also cover the framework in more detail, so I won't linger for too long here. So if you click on the interactive framework, it'll pull up a larger version of the framework. So imagine it from building in the center, starting with the most individual level factors and expanding to social and institutional factors. The framework begins with survivors' unique characteristics and identities, and it then goes on to look at the types of GBV that the survivor is experiencing, things like physical violence, isolation, and financial abuse. The framework then acknowledges social and interpersonal factors like a survivor's social supports, their financial situation, and their mental health. And lastly, it expands to institutional and systemic factors like racism, colonialism, and ableism. And you'll see these little purple dots as well. If you hover over them, they just define some of the terms in the framework. And the RISA framework and tool are really grounded in this understanding that we can't use a one-size-fits-all approach when we're assessing a survivor's risk. And we have to understand that there may be many different factors at play. I'm going to close out of the framework and I'll quickly show you guys the RISA learning modules. So the learning modules are a very important component of the RISA tool. They're a way for service providers to expand their learning about risk assessment, safety planning, as well as trauma-informed and intersectional approaches to risk assessment and risk management. So there's 3 different modules. We have an introduction to gender-based violence and the basics. We have module 2, which is really about the foundations of risk assessment and safety planning. And then module 3, which narrows in on those intersectional and trauma-informed approaches to risk assessment. There are new modules being consistently added, so make sure to check back for more updates. So now that I've gone through these 2 components, I will get into the RISA tool and the demo of the interactive tool. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom here and hit Start Assessment. And then once you get to this page, you'll notice that there's 2 different versions of the RISA tool that you can use. So we have the online tool, and then below it, there are some PDF versions of the tool, which you can access as well. It's really up to you which version you would prefer to use. The online tool is more interactive and it's more of a personalized and easy experience. But the PDF version is always there if you aren't able to access the online tool. So I'm going to hit the Launch Tool button, and you'll see you get taken to the tool website. So before I begin with the demo of the interactive tool, I just want to give a brief disclaimer. Please note that this is a self-directed tool for service providers to use with professional discretion and in line with relevant organizational policies, professional codes of conduct, and laws. The Schlifer Clinic does not assume any responsibility or liability for safety planning conducted using this tool. And please always refer to your organization's own policies and procedures, which take precedent over the content provided in this tool, and make sure to consult with your supervisor. So I'm going to log out quickly. It's automatically logged me in. But what you will be taken to when you hit the Launch Tool button is this login page. So if you hit the Register button, you'll be able to create an account. You'll notice it'll prompt you to enter your email address, your name, and create a password. Please use your organization's email address and not your personal email address. And also please note that your account may take up to 2 business days to be approved. So I'm going to quickly log in. And once you log in, you'll be taken to this account page. And from there, you can click on My Dashboard in the navigation menu to access the questionnaire, the risk factor report, and the safety plans. So once you've completed multiple questionnaires, they'll appear in this table down here. They'll each be categorized by a unique RISA ID number. So each time you begin a new questionnaire, a unique RISA ID number will be generated for that questionnaire. Make sure to please write down the RISA ID number of your client so that you can keep track of their corresponding risk assessments, as we do not collect any personal identifying information about clients in this tool. So let's get into the questionnaire. If you open up a new questionnaire, you'll see at the top there's some instructions for service providers on how to use the questionnaire, as well as how to prepare themselves and their clients. I won't read through all of the questions, but I will briefly explain what each section focuses on. So if we scroll down, you'll see all 5 sections here. So section 1 asks about the client's current situation, including questions about their living situation and any court applications. So at the top of each section, there's a brief description for providers, along with a suggested script, as well as some prompts that you can use to guide your way throughout the assessment. And these prompts and scripts are meant to help you guide the conversation in a trauma-informed way. So as you're going through the questionnaire, you'll want to tick the answer choice below the question that applies to your client. And then there's also a comments and notes box down below, which you can use to note down any additional information that your client brings up that may be relevant. All of this information will translate onto the risk factor report, which I'll show you in a minute. So I'll quickly collapse that section. I'll move on to section 2. So section 2 asks questions about relevant identity factors. So these are things like a client's age, their gender identity, and their immigration status. And then sections 3 to 5 ask questions that aim to identify the level of risk that a client is experiencing. So section 3 asks about the types of violence the client is experiencing. Section 4 asks questions about the person who caused harm. And section 5 asks about institutional and systemic factors that the client may be experiencing. Once you complete the questionnaire, you can click on the Generate Report button at the bottom of the screen. You can also hit the Save Draft button if you're completing the questionnaire over multiple sessions, or if there are questions that you want to return to later. You can also edit the questionnaire for up to 60 days after starting it, regardless of which button you press. Please note that we cannot guarantee access to the questionnaire beyond 60 days, and we also don't retain any copies of the questionnaires. So once you hit the Generate Report button, you'll be redirected back to the dashboard page. From there, you'll be able to see your new questionnaire, risk factor report, and safety plan, all categorized based on the RISA ID number. Again, please remember to note down the client's unique RISA ID number so that you can keep track of their corresponding risk assessment. So now let's open up the risk factor report. I'm going to open up a report of a sample questionnaire that I've already filled out. So the risk factor report lists the risk factors that your client is currently experiencing based on their responses to the questionnaire. On the top of the page, you'll see some instructions on how to use the report. Please read through these before proceeding to the rest of the report. If you scroll down, you'll notice that the risk factors are categorized by cluster, and each cluster represents a different category of risk. So cluster 1 represents risk factors for serious harm and lethality. Cluster 2 includes risk factors for potential reassault, and then cluster 3 includes additional systemic or institutional risk factors that may be relevant. Also, any comments that you make during the questionnaire will appear in the comment column. The purpose of this report is to help you make a professional judgment about the level of risk your client is experiencing, and the clusters are meant to help you do so. For example, you can see that this client is experiencing multiple cluster 1 and cluster 2 risk factors, meaning that they're likely at a high risk of future violence. Please note that this report isn't designed to be shared directly with clients because the language is not tailored to clients. It is important to communicate this information to your clients, but you can use your professional judgment to determine the best way to do so. Now I'll show you guys the safety plan. So if you click on the My Dashboard button, you'll be redirected back to this main page, and you can click on View Plan. So at the top, you'll notice there's this gray section. This includes some instructions for service providers on how to use the safety plan. We recommend reviewing these again before going through the plan. And the safety plan actually can be shared directly with your client, either by printing it or by sending it electronically. You can also share it verbally with them. It's completely up to your discretion. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see this header here, safety plan for, and then the RISA ID number. Underneath this header, you'll find some instructions for the client and a description of what the safety plan is. If you choose to print the safety plan for your client, it will only print everything below this header, and the instructions for providers at the top will not be printed. If you scroll down a bit, under the contents heading, you'll see 4 content links. These safety strategies are more general and important for all survivors to consider, and so they're all on each personalized safety plan. If you click on a content link, for example, emotional safety, it'll bring you down to the corresponding section of the safety plan. And then if you scroll back up and you take a look at this table, you'll see the risk factors that are relevant specifically to your client and corresponding safety links. So these safety strategies are unique to your client's situation, and they're based on the risk factors that they're experiencing, which were identified in the questionnaire. So for example, this client is living with a person who caused harm, so they'll receive the safety strategy if when living with the person who caused harm, which includes some safety tips that are relevant to their situation. And then the last component of the RISA tool are the RISA action plans. So if you head back to my dashboard and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see this button here that says Download Action Plan. When you open that up, you'll see that there are 3 different action plans. The first one provides some follow-up questions to go over with your client. The second one consists of an ongoing risk management plan. And the last one is a high-risk consultation and action plan. So thank you so much for listening to this demo. I'm now going to pass things back over to Deepa to do a little debrief of everything you just learned and answer any of your questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Emma. So at this point, we decided that we'll take like a 5-minute pause and check in space for all of you. If anyone has any thoughts that they would like to share, you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand.
Deepa, it's Margarita here. They can submit their questions in the chat or they can submit questions in the Q&A, but our chat is currently closed and there isn't a way to participate with raising the hand right now.
Okay, thank you so much, Margarita, for clarifying that.
Yeah.
So just at this point, we won't be taking all the questions, but there are a couple of questions that I can see in the chat function that might be relevant for this stage. So one of the questions, this is meant for Emma, is there any option where service providers, caseworkers can populate the form to see and assess how the form and system works with just supplying journal response and they get in the client population they serve without a specific client information? So yes, you can do testing with the tool. And the only downside to testing too much could be that you'll have a bit of a clutter in your own dashboard created, and you'll have to continuously try to clean it. And so, yeah, I would ask you to be careful and not do too many testing files. But most definitely, you can just test it using like what you may call it, like a Jane Doe name. And other question, Emma, is do you feel this would be useful for survivors of sexual violence or could be used in sexual assault centers? We will be telling you a little bit about the tool and what the next stages of the development of the tool is. There is a benefit in using it with survivors of sexual violence, but it's not designed specifically. It is designed more generally for broadly speaking gender-based violence. But we are going to be developing some specialized portions of the tools for, and the human trafficking survivor is one of those, and sexual violence and criminalized survivors are some others that are on the horizon. What age range is this tool intended to use for? Emma, what is the age range?
So Over 18 is the age range of the tool. This is just because most of the risk factor research that we collected is focused on individuals who are over the age of 18, and there's not a ton of research for teenagers. However, there are aspects of the tool that are applicable as well for teenagers, but yeah, it's really meant for anyone over 18. So it could be anyone from 18 to 75. The questions really cover a broad level of factors. So
for if you have survivors who are what I call the early majority client base, which is 16 to the 18, where there are young adults, I would say you could look at the questions and see what questions might be relevant for the work you are doing specifically. But as Emma said, we haven't tested it for teens and we haven't tested it for young people. So there is a technical glitch with the login page. I think we should make sure that we will make sure we send you all the correct links. If the links are not working right now, we will send them again by the end of the session or during the session. We'll check what the problem with the links is. So I will take this as our last question around, should you be adapting the tool? I think broadly speaking, yes, you can adapt the tool. You can also skip the questions. And the only challenge I see with that is that you're relying on your professional judgment, which is important to be relied on. In fact, throughout the tool, we give the script around that people as service providers or professionals and experts should always use their professional judgment. But I would not want you to adapt it to a point where it doesn't remain relevant, because then the results that it is supposed to produce for you, it won't produce the same results. So it will be an assistance to the work that you're doing, but the results and the plans that it's producing, it's not necessarily going to do the same thing. In terms of skipping some portions of the tool and maybe doing one cluster of questions over second cluster of questions, doing it in multiple settings or multiple sittings, all of that is okay, and we have tested it for that reason. And in terms of testing and feedback, we are very much in the process of doing extensive trainings with the agencies who want to test it and who want to give us feedback. If you're interested in any of that, we will tell you more about it towards the end of the presentation, but please feel free to connect with us and send us a request, and we will be happy to work with you, especially if you're in Ontario. We have funding for Ontario, but if you're outside Ontario, we can still make it work through Zoom. But we would need you to contact with us. I know that there are more questions, and we would love to get to all of them, but I think we need to resume the activities of the PowerPoint that we have for you. And once we have done our formal content, we will come back to it. And I think I covered a whole bunch of questions in one, like the way I was answering. But Emma, do you see anything that you feel like we need to respond at this moment?
I just saw one question that asked about if this tool can be used for 2 SLGBTQ plus couples, and I just wanted to say that yes, absolutely. We don't use any like gendered pronouns in the questions for that reason, because we know that couples can take any form. And yeah, there's also questions that ask about sexual orientation as well. So it's really meant to be adaptable for anyone.
And we tested it when in our lived experience, survivor experience testing, we tested it with a specialized group of LGBTQS2 survivors as well. Okay, so should we resume the PowerPoint at this point?
Yes, I will go to the next slide.
Okay, so the next slide is actually our role play that me and Emma are going to do. In this role play, we are going to take the case example of Alex. And very quickly, I'll share with you what the case example is about. And in the role play, I'll be acting as a service provider, and Emma will be Alex. And what you have on your slides is the case scenario for Alex, who is 22-year-old, lives with her same-sex partner. The couple has lived together for 3 years. Alex disclosed that her partner has been emotionally abusive since they moved in together and was recently physically violent. Alex is thinking about leaving her partner, but is unsure because she recently lost her job and has no means to pay for her living expenses. If she were to move out, she is currently isolated from her family due to homophobia and is reluctant to reach out to them for support. Alex is unsure what her legal rights are and her options might be for separating from her partner. A few things that we all need to be curious, as you will see me and Emma have a dialogue, which is around what about Alexa's situation jumps out to you as potentially putting her at risk of physical harm? And are there any safety considerations you can think of that might be particularly relevant for Alex's situation? So moving on to the next slide. So this scenario that we are going to be showcasing with all of you today is of our first meeting. I will use some of the questions on the screen, which have already been filled out, and we will try to demonstrate how you will use the tool, and then what could be the outcome. So, hi, Alex. Thank you so much for coming to meet me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, thanks.
Alex, my name is Deepa, and I am an intake worker here at the clinic. And your file has been assigned to me, so I'll be working with you moving forward. I'm really glad to see you today.
It's nice to meet you as well.
Thank you, Alex. So, Alex, my role here is to listen to you and provide any assistance that I could. And before I start going into asking you questions, I wanted to know a little bit more about you. And can you please tell me what brought you to the clinic?
Yeah, so my girlfriend has been emotionally abusive towards me for quite a while now, but last week things escalated and she ended up hitting me. We've lived together for 3 years and I'm thinking about moving out, but I can't really afford it because I lost my job recently. And so I just wanted to know what my options would be for leaving.
I'm so sorry to hear about that. That must be really hard. Alex, I am really happy to talk about some of the options and also the resources. Maybe one of the things that I can do with you today is to create a little bit of a safety plan that you can use regardless of what options you choose. Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay with me.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll pull a list of questions on my computer. We use a program here. So I will be asking some questions from that program, which will help me understand the situation better. And then I'll be able to offer some help with the plan and the next steps. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, that sounds okay.
Okay. Can I just very quickly ask you, how would you like to refer your girlfriend throughout these questions?
You can just refer to her as my girlfriend.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Um, okay, so if you need me to repeat any questions, please just let me know. The first question I have here is, are you currently living with the person who's causing harm, which in your case is your girlfriend?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You mentioned that you have been thinking of leaving. Is that right?
Yes, I'm considering it. I would like to end the relationship and move out. But again, because I recently lost my job, I don't have a way to pay for living expenses right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, that's hard. I can imagine. So maybe maybe once we have done this process of the assessment, we can talk about leaving and other options related to it. There are some resources here at the clinic I would refer you to as well. But going back to the questionnaire for a minute, are there any other barriers that you think you would have leaving your girlfriend?
Yes, my family kind of stopped talking to me when they found out that I was dating a woman, so I don't really want to reach out to them for support because I'm not sure how open they would be.
Oh, okay. So your family's connection is going to be. I understand. Okay. Can I ask you another question around your girlfriend, which is that has she been ever charged or released on any conditions or bail?
No, the police have never been involved. I've never like contacted them about anything.
Okay. So there has been no police involvement so far. Um, but in some cases, how we work is that we see people come to us and start right away in the family court settings. So instead of making the complaint, they decide to leave. And start a process. Are you planning to start some kind of a process in family court? And have you ever been served with any court documents?
No, since we aren't married, I didn't think that there was anything that I could do in family court.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much for answering these questions so far. Now, since you've been living together for some time, you said 3 years, you may be considered common law, and there may be some options for you in the family court. Would you like me to talk about that or later or right now? How are you feeling?
Um, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Maybe we could pause and take a
Uh,
break.
Absolutely, absolutely. How about I maybe we can end for today here and we can set up another meeting um, where I would probably ask you a few more questions, but maybe I can do some safety planning today and give you some few safety tips that may be helpful for a little while, and then we will continue our conversation from here.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so let me just populate this for you and go on the next slide. So if you are thinking of sharing this, this is back to the audience. If you're thinking of sharing this report to the client and give the notes to the client directly, I would recommend you going over these notes with client. And if you're choosing to just use it for your own professional judgment and then offer some material, whatever format your agency uses, you could use that too. So it can be done in either or way. So Alex, here are a few things that I'm thinking that you should um, keep in mind. You should think about your emergency escape plan in terms of, you know, who are the people you would call in case situation escalates. Do you have anyone, Emma? Sorry, Alex, do you have anyone who you could call right away if there is a situation that escalates?
Yeah, I've got some close friends that I could reach out to.
And does any one of them know about your situation?
No, I don't, yeah, I didn't really want to share it because I feel kind of ashamed, so I haven't told anyone.
Okay, so from our conversation today, and since the tips that I'm offering you does include thinking about a clear safety exit pathways for yourself, and one of the offers that we always give to people is that you should think about who was your trusted friend, colleague, or neighbor, or an organization who you could speak with, and also who could be keeping an eye out in case something happens unannounced or things escalate. So maybe you can think about someone who you could be working with for this heads up. Is that something that you can think about?
Yeah, yeah, I'd be open to telling someone.
Okay. And then maybe next time when we meet, you can tell me who that person you're thinking about could be. Um, Also, in terms of your transportation, Alex, do you drive?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of your if you drive, have you ever thought about what kind of route you would take to exit from your house if you need to be quickly leaving?
No, I never thought about that.
So that's another thing that I think you and I need to think through, and you can maybe think about some suggestions of ideas, which you would probably think through about if you have to leave in rush, what would be the right way to leave it. When you come back, we can talk about some of this stuff in depth. I'm wondering how are you feeling at this point?
Um, it's definitely a lot to think about, but I also feel better because I have someone to help me, and I have some steps that I can take.
If I give you a written copy of this document that I have in front of me, um, do you think you can keep it safely and your girlfriend won't be like looking for this kind of material from your bag?
Yeah, I could keep it maybe in my gym locker. Um,
That's a perfect idea, and I think it's a very safe strategy. Okay, so in that case, let me get your copy, and I am really happy that we were able to start the conversation today.
yeah, thank you very much, Deepa.
You're most welcome. Take good care, Alex. Hopefully, we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Hey, so Emma, not Alex. Uh, do you want to share some thoughts?
Sure. I think it feels very like reassuring to receive some tangible steps that you can implement if you're in a situation where you're fearing for your safety. So even just talking through like contacting a trusted friend and thinking about a route that you could take to leave a situation is really helpful for people, even if they're not quite ready to do the full in-depth safety planning. Just having a couple of things that they can have in their head would just make you feel more at ease.
I agree with you. And talking in this setting where I'm not a real worker at this point, and you're not a real client, even then it feels like there is so much to unpack, and there are so many things that needs to be checked and asked. And we were just trying to do a sample of questions, but within that, I was like already you could see that I was going off script and asking you things that I was like, oh. But if she's saying she's driving, then I can't offer her to keep, the number of the taxi, which was in the script, right? Or the route of a service to call a cab. So every question and every answer changes the response, and there is a lot of variables. And one big piece which I really like about the tool is that it prompts and gives you a lot of prompts and a lot of ways of asking the question, and helps you think through how can you introduce the topic to the person. So one of the things that we heard from survivors on this journey was that they also don't want to always rely on service providers for assessment of their safety or assessment of where they are at in their journey. And getting inspired from that feedback, we actually very recently launched a tool, which is on the next slide, and it's called Petal Forward tool. Petal Forward is a space which is not for service providers. It's a space for survivors themselves. There are 3 quizzes right now. The first one is related to feeling unsafe in your relationship. The second one is worried about a loved one that you care for in your life. And the last one is feeling unsafe online. And we have 3 more in the pipeline that we will be launching. And this whole space is designed for service for survivors and people with lived experience, whether they call themselves survivors or people whether they call themselves someone who's a victim. Doesn't matter. It can be used by basically anyone who wants to know what are the safety tips out there for me, and how do I keep myself safe? What kind of red flags and green flags in there when I'm in a relationship? And then there are some infographics, some self-education tips, and materials. And again, similar to RISA, we use a very similar technology where you will fill in the space with your own answers to the questions directed, and the response will give you ideas of what is happening and what level of supports and planning do you need to do. And the website also gives a number of resources that survivors can connect with, and then those resources are national, and those could be the starting point and conduit to various services, local services. One of the requests that we make to every audience that we take this tool to is that please don't put it on social media, because that's not what the intent is. This is meant to be given to the community of survivors right in their hands, and we try not to do too much of putting it in public domain, because then what happens is when you put information like this and social media and other those kind of spaces, it gets then clogged at times or attacked by abusers, and we don't want it to be in that kind of space. But we are very proud of the work that we have done, and we are in the process of receiving feedback. So along with RISA, if you work with survivors and you have a community of survivors, or you're running groups, we would really love you to take it to those spaces and send us feedback. So that's Petal Forward tool, and the work, as you will see, is designed. The designing of the whole elements are done in a way which is very light, and it's very accessible. The language in these materials are also extremely accessible, so that more and more survivors can use it more easily. Emma, do you want to add anything to Petal Forward?
I think you've covered everything. Yeah, feel free to go on I believe the link was just shared in the chat, so feel free to go on the website and play around with the tool. There's lots of content on there, so we'd love to get your feedback. There's also a feedback form at the bottom of, in the footer of each page. So if you have feedback, or if you share with a client and they have any feedback, feel free to direct them to that form. We'd love to hear from you.
So back to you, Emma, for the next slide as well, and next steps.
Yes, so just a few things that we ask you guys to do to follow up if you're interested. Set up a free RISA account using the link provided and start exploring the interactive version of the RISA questionnaire and reports. Again, feedback is welcome. There is a feedback form linked at the bottom of the page of the RISA tool. So we'd love to hear any feedback that you guys have. If you have any issues setting up an account, feel free to contact us at risa@schliferclinic.com and we'll do our best to resolve that. Again, a reminder to please use your organization's email address just so that we can identify you as a service provider, because this tool is only meant for service providers. We also welcome you to check out the free Learning Hub on the Rise Above Risk website. The modules are also available via the Schlifer Clinic's YouTube account, but there's lots of great information and educational stuff there, and all of it's free. And then lastly, as I just mentioned, explore the Pedal Forward tool and share it with trusted networks and clients. And as Margarita mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we'd also love to hear from you about how we did today on the feedback form that you will, I believe, get automatically redirected to once the presentation is over. And yeah, feel free to contact us with the email on the screen with any questions that you have. As well, if you are interested in booking a training for the RISA tool, especially if you're based in Ontario, as Deepa mentioned, feel free to contact me directly. I believe Margarita is sharing my email address or has already shared it in the chat. So if you're interested in booking a training for your organization, feel free to contact me directly and we can set something up. So yeah, we appreciate all of your time and attention. And now we'll do some Q&A and answer the rest of the questions.
Oh, Margarita, we can't hear you. We can see that you're
Right.
talking.
You can see me talking. Okay. Thanks, Deepa. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the presentation. And it was so great the way you walked us through the tool and the material and the demo. And so I'm echoing what's also coming through in the Q&A. It's such an excellent tool. It's really comprehensive. There was a lot that you shared today, and the way you walked us through it was really clear. There were some questions that came in, so I want to take a few minutes that we still have together. We're together until 2:30, so I'm going to go through some of those questions next. Just a moment. All right. So there was a question from the audience. A couple of people are thinking about how to use this tool and thinking about tools that they might be currently using. So one of the questions is, how difficult would it be as an agency to transition from, for example, the Ontario Domestic Assault Risk Assessment, so the ODERA assessment, to the RISA? And could you see the two tools being used together? And there's another question. How would you compare the two?
In terms of if you're trying to use two tools together, I could see possibilities because the purpose could be slight. You'll have to obviously decide with your own policies and protocols how you want to utilize the two spaces. When I look at ODERA versus looking at RISA, RISA is more of a case management tool. It is not necessarily just a point in time risk assessment. It can be used for the journey of a client from the beginning to the midpoint to the wrapping up in the end. And so you could create a protocol, for example, where you would say, we will start with ODERA, but when we get to the case management, we will actually use RISA. The big difference in ODERA, for that matter, any other tool, is that unless and until the tools have adapted the intersectional analysis, and they're asking those specific questions that you will see when you test RISA around people's location, their background, their history, their immigration status. So most of the risk assessment tools do not go into that side of things, and RISA does that. And that's probably one of the biggest difference. So it depends on your clientele, depends on people you work with, what would work better for you. And if all of those factors are relevant, I would suggest that RISA could benefit.
Excellent. Thank you, Deepa. There is obviously a lot of interest in the tool and using this tool. And I know, Deepa, you mentioned this, but just for clarity, is there a cost and or a license required to use the tool? And are there limits to the number of accounts an organization may have or the number of files that they may be able to create with the tool?
No, we don't have any restriction on the number of accounts or number of files, saying that if we see that there are too many accounts from same organization at the back end, if we notice that, but they are not being used or one is used but other is not, Emma might get in touch with you because Emma is the one who will be reviewing that data. And Emma is also the person who actually approves. It all sounds very fancy. You will apply for the license and someone will. There is no fancy IT at the background. It's Emma actually who's approving your membership. So yeah, in case she sees that there are too many accounts being opened, we might check in with you to see how relevant it is for you to have that many accounts. But yeah, we right now we haven't worked out any caps.
Great. Thank you, Deepa. Thanks for that clarity. So there's a question here that, recognizing that it depends on the individual and the situation, but in terms of an estimate, around how long does it take to complete the RISA tool with the client?
Emma, we did at some point we did that testing, right? Like and we do give suggested time. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, so I would give ballpark 45 minutes to go through the entire tool. However, we do recommend doing it kind of in increments, like we showed in the role play demo, just because it can be a lot to go through at once, especially if you're meeting with a client, like for the first or second time, and you want to build that rapport. It might be a lot to go in and do the full tool. Some clients may have the capacity to do so, so it's just up to your professional judgment. But yeah, we'd say about 45 minutes, but also once you familiarize yourself with the questions in the tool, you can kind of like go off the ones that are coming up more in your initial assessment and then maybe save some of the ones that you still want to address, but maybe are not like the most pressing risk factors to do a later risk assessment and more of an ongoing risk management strategy, if that makes sense.
Emma is saying that when you are going through the questionnaire, you could also definitely skip things, right? Like you don't have to do all the questions, but in total there are 49 questions. And on average, I would say each question can take 1 to 2 minutes, right? So when Emma says around 45 minutes, it's pretty on point. It can be like 5 minutes more than less. And in a trauma-informed practice point of view, you don't want to be asking that many questions in one sitting. And hence we say that spread them out, prepare your client around what is the goal of the meeting. So that front loading is really important, and why you are using the tool and how many questions you might be asking them. So if you can prepare yourself and because if you prepare yourself, you prepare your client, right? Simultaneously, it's like, this is what the purpose is, these many questions we will be going through, and then doing the check-in. So if you might have noticed that through the role play, we were trying to demonstrate where I was checking in with Alex. How are you doing? Or how are you feeling, right? So those check-ins are also built in the script of the tool.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's also a really helpful reminder what you've just mentioned about being trauma informed and thinking about the length of time you're spending on these questions. There's another question here, and this comes from a couple of audience members that are wondering about using the tool with clients with intersecting risk factors. So for examples that we're giving were, survivors who are pregnant or who have children, survivors who may be using substances, who may have mental health issues or experiencing homelessness. So wondering a little bit about how that gets captured or reflected in the tool.
This particular tool has definitely been tested with family situations, so where it's mothers or people living in a family setting where they might be experiencing violence. So it's not only that you are you have dependence, but it could be that you are someone's dependent. And so we have tested its usage for both. I would not necessarily be fully confident in saying that we have all the questions covered for a situation of substance abuse or substance dependency. I think we can do a little bit better in that area. And that's why when we identified the developmental areas for the tool as our next steps, human trafficking is one of those areas, and the criminalization of survivors is another one. And in those two areas where we'll be actually, if you are an agency that works with that particular population, you could help us as we develop some very specialized, specific questions. There are some questions that help in assessment around drug dependency or substance dependency, but it's not necessarily as deep in that area as we would like it to be. I don't know if you agree with me there or you have other thoughts.
No, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. Yeah, we do have like a specific safety planning section for people with children. So that's definitely something that's covered pretty extensively by the tool. But in terms of substance abuse and mental health, since it's a little bit more of a niche area that we're not quite as familiar with, the tool is obviously still relevant, but there may be some additional things that you would want to pay attention to if you're working specifically with survivors who are also dealing with that as well.
Thank you. Thank you both. So you can see, I think, Emma and Deepa, that there are so many questions coming in. So I'm doing my best here. I'm going through some of the questions. There's another question here about, there were actually a couple of questions about tailoring or personalizing the safety plan and resources that are generated. Is there a way to add resources specific to the client's region, for example?
Yes, I think it gives you a section to write additional stuff in there. And what happens is we didn't do so we do demos differently. Sometimes we do demo in live, like where we show you where we are entering. So basically, whatever you enter can be produced into the plan. So if you're entering stuff around, that I want to refer this client to, say, a specific agency or specific, as part of your planning, those notes can show up. So you can definitely make it, personalize it by the way you will fill out the form. But there's also space for you to just add additional thing by hand if you need to.
Excellent. You really have covered so much with the tool, thinking about all those pieces. Um, there's a question too about someone here thinking about using the tool. Could you see this being used to support folks through a GBV chat line, or is it best for in-person support?
So, yeah, it's very complicated, right? That usage of AI is like in itself like a whole conversation. But no, we have not tested it for that environment where it's almost like an automated environment for someone. We have not tested it for that. We are wanting to have a capacity to access it from various different places, and have like an embedded version of it, which can, maybe part of people's overall case management. But we have not at all tested it for any kind of AI or any kind of chat line environment. Um, and we don't feel safe. And I'll tell you why. And I'm not, this is not a criticism of AI. I don't feel safe it to be used because the tool is designed with professional judgment. This tool is designed with that human professional judgment to be applied. And in fact, what we say is that in our trainings, that if you need to use the tool, you need to go through the training modules and you need to understand and unpack the intersectionality and unpack what it means for your clients and your community. So because there is a requirement almost for you to use the tool to familiarize yourself on the framework, and we did give you a snapshot of it today. I would not feel comfortable it to be applied through an AI kind of a lens or
Right.
capacity. I think that would be, yeah, it will
That
fail.
that makes sense, Deepa. And just a reminder to folks, because there was a question, that beautiful design framework, right, that Emma shared and that started and you move out in the layers, that's part of the training, correct, Deepa? Like that's
Yes,
part of that foundational training that people would access when they go to your site for the tool.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Um, so okay, moving along here. There's a question about experience and feedback that you've received, and you've been talking a little bit about that as well. What has your experience using the tool with clients? Um, what has been your experience using this tool with clients, or have you received any feedback, from clients or other service providers who have used it? Are there any success stories or maybe challenges that you could share with the audience today?
I can start with the challenge and maybe Emma can share um, the feel good factor. The challenge that I have heard in some of the trainings that I have been part of is that the length. People usually in the work that we do want quick solutions. It's like it's the era of quickness, right? Like the gram era of 5 minutes maximum on a video kind of a era that we live in. So people don't feel comfortable having to go through an extensive conversation like that. They want something quick. And and we do understand that for some location of services, maybe you don't have the privilege of having long-term relationship with clients and you are only a screening place. So we are going to develop a screening tool aspect of this to cover that experience, but length is something that I've heard a lot of people when we go through the entire script and we expect you to be thoughtful and we expect you to be trauma informed and we give you a lot of prompts to follow. So the entirety of and because people are working in such fast-paced environments at times that they find it a bit overwhelming from that perspective. And yeah, Emma can share some good factors, the positives.
Yeah. Well, we actually heard a while ago from a lawyer who actually used the RISA tool in court to provide evidence for like her client who was facing high risk of GBV. So that was a really amazing thing for us to hear that the tool was actually being used to help survivors seek legal justice, which is one of the things that we found in our research. So it was really cool to see that happen. Another thing we've heard from some service providers is it's been helpful for them to help communicate risk to their client that their client may not actually really acknowledge as being risk in the first place, and bringing those factors to their attention that they might not have considered a risk up until that point, or even still don't necessarily consider it a risk, but to just be kind of aware and have someone be able to communicate that to them. We've heard from service providers that that's been a helpful thing that RISA has been able to do for them. So
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Deepa. So we do have a little bit more time, so I'm just preparing you that we have a few more questions still. Um, there's a question, does the tool, especially the safety plan, consider if the threat of violence is coming from the workplace?
So We do have some questions about related to people's situation of employment, but it is not a workplace harassment tool per se. It would cover some questions again, but I would not say that it is a tool that is meant for workplace harassment in particular, as we were talking about sexual violence. Workplace harassment can be very, it does keep it is enough open, and I would invite you to test it. It is enough open that the cast of the characters um, who are exerting power and control in a workplace harassment situation, because the clinic does have a workplace harassment work. Like we have two projects right now which focus on that, and we have caseworkers and lawyers working on that, and including independent legal advice. And so we do utilize some of the questions coming out of RISA for that particular group of survivors, but it's not necessarily meant for that particular um, population. And it's the universality of it that we are asking you to test. And then probably again, similar to experience of human trafficking or sexual violence, there might be some additional questions that might be needed to be asked, which are not right now included.
Right. Right. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you. I've noticed that after we responded to the question about the chat, there was just some clarity and some follow-up questions. So um some people are saying it's imagining using this tool, for example, for a chat line or a phone line that's operated by a service provider, or also perhaps someone using this tool virtually. So maybe meeting with the client virtually. So Deepa, I just wanted to give you a chance if you might want to respond to the use of the tool in those contexts, not AI.
Absolutely. I think if you're using it like as Alex and Deepa were demonstrating, right? Like that can totally happen. That's not a problem at all. Using it in a phone meeting, it's not a problem at all. As long as you have a way to then share the safety plan, whether it's through a safe email or whether it's through some other provision, that whatever works for in your community. Yeah, no, for those settings, it's not a problem at all. But I was thinking, I actually went very quickly, and that's like maybe the world I live in. I very quickly got to the chat
That's
lines,
it. Yes,
like the auto AI focused chat lines. That's where my headspace went. So I apologize.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. This is just thank you, Deepa. That'll be able to provide our audience with the response.
Yeah.
So,
Margarita, can I just very quickly
of
say,
course.
so uh, in the current project of RISA, what we have some commitments that I want to share with all of you, which might help people as they're thinking about would they like to test it or not. We have commitments of actually developing the tool and the questions in multiple languages. Currently, also the questionnaire can be very easily. So we have a PDF version of the questionnaires available. So the automated version or the web tool version that we showed you is not the only way you got to use it. You can actually still download the PDFs and you can still use it in old school type where you're using your pen and paper and sitting with the person and doing it. And those questions can be made available in multiple languages, including French, with very little lead time because we have our own interpretation services, as we told you. We could get those translated. With some languages, we have made commitment already, but if there are organizations who are working with people with different languages. So I just, because I had noted someone had asked, do you have this available in French? And yeah, the French questions, not the web tool is not available in French, but the questions are available in French if someone needs the PDF of the questions to test them.
Excellent.
Sorry, would you mind if I just hop in for a second?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
We do have a multilingual plugin on the interactive tool, but it's not a perfect translation. So as Deepa was saying, like we do have like properly like translated versions that are been done by translators, but that is available. So if you are wanting to access the tool in a different language, I believe there's 10 or so languages that are available. Um, as long as you're aware that there may be some small errors and you can kind of catch them as you're going through the tool, we encourage you to try it out with a plugin as well, so that we obviously want to make it as widely accessible as possible. So we do have that option.
Yes, thank you, Emma, for capturing it. Like the web tool also can. There is like language, website language accessibility little box that you can click on. So yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. There's a question as well. So you did respond earlier thinking about those between 16 and 18, but there's another question here. I understand that this tool is meant for those 18 and older, but I wondered if it could be used in cases of family violence, perhaps where a caregiver who may be experiencing violence and aggression from a teen.
Hmm. My assessment is it won't cover that. My assessment is it won't cover um, abuse from a teenager, right? Like I think there needs to be a very specific kind of line of questions that need to be asked when you have a young person inflicting violence, because yeah, and it would require a different level of nuance and prompts and supports. Again, I mean, if you work with that population and you want to test the question and see what kind of questions, because it still has some safety planning tips which are universal and can be helpful, but I don't think that it can be used for that particular scenario. But you're giving
Mhm.
us a lot of good ideas to think about. So thank you for those.
And you're right, and there are many questions still coming in. So there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of interest in the tool, Deepa and Emma. Um, so okay, I've got time for just a couple more questions. So I am going to just provide a few more questions here to both of you. Um, y- you said, sorry here. Okay, I guess there was another question here about, can you say a little bit more about how you think the RISA tool and reports could be used in legal proceedings? And is it possible, and I'm not sure here, the person is asking, is it possible to share the name of the case where the tool was introduced in court?
So we don't have the name, I think, because this was something that we heard from the service provider. We would be happy to go back to them and check with them. And my understanding is what they used the tools assessment, the risk assessment was in a setting of a family law case proceeding to showcase the level of risk this particular person was facing and um, uh, a a restraining order that they were applying, and the case actually had a social worker already involved for other reasons in the case, and it was already a case where there was demonstrated violence, and that's where it was utilized. We definitely feel that in family law setting and family law cases, risk assessment tools, if the judges are open to accepting reports from risk assessment tools, they can be very, very helpful because there can be an objectivity to what is being presented in front of the judge instead of uh, an assessment which they don't have time to look into, especially when they're making decisions on restraining orders and preliminary decisions that they're making for the family arrangement related to some of the parenting decisions and some of the conditions that are being imposed. At that stage, it can be very helpful. And happy to go back to the agency that informed us of their utilization. And if we get any more information, Margarita will send it back to you.
That would be great. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you. Um, I'm just going to remind folks because we do continue to get some questions about like the fees Again, just to mention that this tool is free and accessible and that there is also some training. Emma, if you don't mind, could you maybe share that information just another time because we are getting some questions related to that.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, well, we have the learning modules, which are available for everyone like on demand. So that's a way of getting more information about some of the content that the tool has. In terms of training specifically on how to use the tool, that's something that we can provide as well. It's not something that's available on demand like a video format. We'd actually do either a virtual or an in-person training where we'd walk you through kind of something similar to what we did today, do a demo of the tool, maybe do a role play depending on your needs. So if you're interested in setting up a training, feel free to email me. What we normally do is have a short consultation with the person who reached out, just to get a better sense of the needs of the organization and how you're going to be using the tool. And then we would create a training for you based on that and find a date and a time that works for you. So yeah, training is available. Please reach out. We are happy to do trainings for you guys. So
Also, if I may add, if your agency after today, chooses that you would like to test the tool, and you would like to give us feedback on the tool, please contact Emma for that as well. In fact, after we have made the changes to the tool that we are hoping to make in next little while, we have official partnership available on this project. There's some months left into that, so we can develop a partnership with you. If you are interested in doing testing down the line, we will be very happy to also explore that. We are in Ontario, though. That opportunity, unfortunately, we don't have nationally available at this point. Someone asked earlier, like as I'm looking at the questions, that how many people have we tested the tool with? So we talked about that in the presentation. The tool was tested with over 500 service providers, and 38 survivors participated in the process of testing and giving us feedback and development as well. There was another question, Margarita, like how many people have used it? That data, unfortunately, we don't have handy, but maybe in future presentations we will get.
Wonderful. Thank you both, Deepa, Emma. Thank you so much for your presentation, for all of your time, for answering all of these questions. Deepa and Emma can also share the questions that were submitted. Not all of them were responded to. It might be helpful for you to have as well. Thank you to everyone who was participating and submitting questions. A special thank you also to all of the CREVAC team that's behind the scenes, Esther, Jenna, Nicole, Annalie. Thank you also to our ASL interpreters, Alex and Amanda. And just a friendly reminder to everyone to please complete the evaluation form. And also, there's a link to receive a certificate of participation. The link for the evaluation will automatically open in your browser after the event and this session has ended. So thank you again, Deepa and Emma. Thank you so much for your valuable time today, and for walking us through this very important, excellent tool. We look, to everyone else here, we at the Learning Network look forward to welcoming you at our next event. Thank you, everyone.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Margarita.
Welcome.